No, whoops. Sorry. Oh, here it is. Say yes.
It's going. That blue bar is moving.
All right. Welcome, everyone. This is Soup Chat. We ready to roll? All right. So Soup Chat, this is our second podcast for Soup Chat. We want to give credit to Nick Poliak and Mike Lubefeld, who did Soup Chat for 10 years. Got that hashtag Soup Chat going, but they turned it over to us, and we're highlighting all the different cohorts and consortium from ASA and the themes that are and the topics that are part of those cohorts. And really excited about the new cohort that's going to be started here this 24-25 school year, the executive function cohort. We've got Andrew Wise here this evening, and hopefully Calvin Watts will be able to jump on here in a little bit. They're co-leaders for the executive function cohort for ASA, really talking about life and learning, these skills that are going to benefit students all through from early learning, all through their educational career, and then on to their next step, career and college, and life, all these skills that help people to be successful. And I think the cool thing is that there's more and more research coming out and showing the long-term positive impact of these executive function skills. So it's going to be a really exciting conversation this evening. We've got Chris Nesmith, Superintendent of the Elma School District. I'm Peter Finch, Superintendent of the West Valley School District in Yakima, Washington. Chris is over on the other side of the mountains in Washington State. And we'll let Andrew Wise. Andrew, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yes, good evening. Good to see you, Peter and Chris. My name is Andrew Wise. I'm the superintendent of Center Cass School District. Been a superintendent for a decade plus now. I've been involved in AISA for a long time. I've enjoyed learning inside of all of the different cohorts, and super stoked to get an opportunity to lead one and lead one on the most noblest of topics, which is, how kids learn and helping kids learn. So just really excited to be here tonight, and looking forward to our conversation.
So most people know this. Peter's co-lead of early learning, and I'm co-lead of redefining ready. And Andrew's been just one of our instrumental leaders, leading the work on life readiness. And how can we have students just be prepared for actually those kind of hands-on or those self-learning, self-directed skills, those things that we want to have students to have to be independent learners. And Andrew to just take that life readiness work that we've been doing in redefining ready and then just go all in on building executive functioning. We're just so proud that he's able to carry the work he's done with us forward. So Andrew, I think the big thing I want to know is for starters, I mean, we always forget superintendents are people first. What is just something nobody knows about you?
Wow. I don't know if it's something that no one knows about me, but I'll tell you something that happened to me recently that was pretty neat. I just saw Pearl Jam at Wrigley Field last weekend.
Awesome.
That was quite the experience. Of course, I enjoy the music, but also I'm a huge Walter Payton fan, being from the Chicagoland area, and Eddie Vedder did a tribute to Walter Payton, and Walter's son Jared was there, and it was a great evening. So I live in the city, so I hopped on the red line and took that over to Wrigley and had an opportunity to see one of my favorite bands. And Chris and Peter, I think it might be a band that you all might know a little something about.
Well, I think Peter was there. Peter, were you at Wrigley Field on Tuesday?
That could be. It looks like Calvin's coming on, so that's good. So
I think
introducing ourselves and sharing something unexpected. So Chris Nesmith, what's something unexpected about you?
Well, I think the big one right now is my wife and I got in, so I'm coaching a women's rugby team. So it's been a lot of fun, grown women looking for a way to kind of be engaged and active. So, but I think with that, I mean, as Calvin's kind of coming on, we're probably going to want to drift over to our very first question.
Well, I wanted to share about my unexpected. And here comes Calvin. So that's good. Hey, Calvin. Hey, we can hear you.
Great to see you, Peter. How are we doing?
We're great.
We're good. We're introducing ourselves and telling something that maybe people don't know, something unexpected about Calvin Watts.
Something unexpected about Calvin Watts. Well, I tell you what, we are thriving in the midst of challenge and controversy in Gwinnett County Public Schools. And you may have noted we've had an incredible start to the school year. At the same time, no good deed goes unpunished. And I want you to just extend an attitude of gratitude to our leaders, our teachers, our staff, many of those who you may have seen on CNN most recently, a school shooting that took place in Georgia. It took place in a city called Winder, Georgia, which is about 20 miles from Gwinnett County. Many of our staff members, teachers, support staff live in that region. So they were impacted heavily today. So my heart goes out to many of our leaders. We had our monthly leadership development meeting, which is essentially our opportunity to come together as leaders to learn professionally, learn from each other. For me to provide that esprit de corps message that says we're doing incredible work, groundbreaking work right now, and it's just it's a challenge. So at the same time, I love what I do. I love why I do it. But most importantly, my heart goes out to the families who were impacted by this horrible event earlier today. So,
and full disclosure, Calvin, actually, we knew like county to county, you were right next door, and knowing that you had families impacted, and I think we were having a conversation. Everybody saw you kind of signed in a little bit later. Everybody was expecting, like, I think that the big question was, will or will we not see Calvin as it's one of those duties of the superintendent is to provide those supports for your families. So I think kind of a bit of a shift in the tone, but I think on topic with where we're doing. And then Peter, I'm going to have you close with your fun fact for the evening, because I want to make sure that we can roll with Calvin's theme as he sets the team on these executive functioning skills and I think the importance of those executive functioning skills, especially in the midst of a level of crisis that's really personal to you at this moment.
Indeed.
Right.
I appreciate that.
Appreciate you, Calvin, being able to join us. And so again, Andrew and Calvin are co-leaders for the new AASA executive function cohort. And we're just starting off with our podcast here. I'd love to get to know you. So the unexpected or the thing that people may not know about me is that I am in the choir. I get to sing in the choir. My parents were both music teachers, so that was kind of growing up. My dad has been choir director at our church for over 50 years, so I know about preaching to the choir. I've been in the choir, and in college I was in the choir, and I still get to sing. That's the great thing about singing. That's a lifelong activity. And so the Harvard Choir and the Kyoto Choir have a partnership and do concerts every other year. So last May, I got to go to Hiroshima, do a concert for peace with the Kyoto Choir side by side. My daughter graduated a little bit early from Western Washington University, so that was sort of her graduation trip, was to tag along with me, with my travel buddy. And so that's just a very memorable trip, a concert for peace in Hiroshima. May 2024. That was awesome.
So we have about 20 minutes and we've got about just 5 questions for you to talk about executive functioning. So I think the big, simple one, Calvin and Andrew, and you guys can kind of choose how you'd like to tackle this, is can you explain in simple terms life and learning skills and why do they matter in education?
Absolutely. I'll hop in, Calvin. And Calvin, good to see you. Always good to see you.
Indeed, right back at you.
And then you can tag the rest of it. So just executive functioning, life and learning, just core skills that involve the head, the hands, and the heart, right? So let's start with the head in terms of executive functioning. The ability to think. And I know that sounds very simplistic to many people, but we really need to dig in as educators and teach our kids the most effective ways to think and grow their thinking and become better thinkers. We hop right into critical thinking a lot in terms of our phrases with our C's, right? But like, we need to teach kids good reflection techniques, good self-assessment, good metacognition. So thinking is one of those core executive functioning skills, like self-control or self-management. So those are 2 that I'll share, and I'll kick it over to Calvin for a few others.
Oh, Andrew, thank you for that. And I Appreciate it. For those who might not know, Andrew had an opportunity to visit Gwinnett, and we spent a day together and visiting classrooms and seeing what joy can happen when you allow middle school students to become the very best version of themselves. And that's really where it began. Peter, you know, I am a Washingtonian, born and raised. At the same time, technically, I'm also a Georgian because I've lived in Georgia longer than I've lived any other place on this planet. What I've learned, however, serving in Gwinnett County Public Schools now in my fourth year as superintendent, before 13, 14 years essentially prior to that, I recognized how our students learn usually is dependent upon how we as adults provide the shared space for them to learn and grow. And what that means is, as a teacher, and I will always consider myself a teacher. I tell people this all the time. Yes, I happen to serve as superintendent, but I always teach before I tell. And what we're talking about now is how do we provide our students with an opportunity to actually to begin some of those what I would call, again, essential function lifelong learning skills, as we've discussed, that will allow them to process information, will allow them to think critically about the world around them, Andrew, as you mentioned, but equally as important, or actually allow them to be human beings. And when we think about executive function, we want our students to be people first, then students, and then take on the challenges that they exist. But before they can do that, they have to understand their why. Why do we come to school? Well, we come to school so that we'll be better tomorrow than we were the day before. It's really simple, just not always easy. And so executive functioning skills and lifelong learning really is about problem solving. But I've always said, before we think about problem solving, shouldn't we think about avoiding problems in the first place? So that essential function and that executive function of avoiding problems, how do we create systems and structures that will allow us to be better as a result? And so that cognition, that metacognition, as you mentioned, Andrew, the notion of making sure that we're taking care of ourselves for the purpose of learning. We saw it when we were visiting classrooms. Our students are better as a result of our facilitating instruction as opposed to telling what our students need to do. And so I'm enjoying this initial journey. We've got a lot to learn and a lot to show.
What I love about both of you being here is Peter's been a co-lead of early learning, Calvin, and you've been a member of early learning, and you've really looked at that executive functioning and life readiness and how to get our kids ready at that most important age. And then Andrew's been one of our leaders in redefining ready on how can we get our students ready as they move into the next realm of the world. And I just really love how your outlook, I could see it framed, that early learning, your work with Peter's work on that early learning, on how can we get these learners ready to make the appropriate decisions, how to think about it, how can they internalize and own their learning. I just
if I could share that, really appreciate, Calvin, you opening the district and having a site visit for the ASA early learning cohort when we came to Gwinnett County. And it was just amazing to see the joyful learning at the start of the day, where maybe you could talk a little bit about that. And then also, I know that Gwinnett County, you'll be hosting the ASA executive function cohort in October. Maybe just give a little preview about that. So maybe share about that joyful learning and how that really does a foundation for executive function skills.
Well, it's amazing to see. And as I call it inspecting what we expect. My goal is to be visible and accessible in any one of our 142 schools. I'm up to 13 right now. We did start school on August 5th, but I've got a little ways to go. But here's what joyful learning means is that before we ever learn how to conjugate verbs and speak in a different language, we learned how to get along with one another. We were taught how to do that. And I grew up as an only child, but I had cousins that I played with, and I recognized my greatest teachers were my parents. My greatest teachers are now my family and the students whom we serve. So thinking about what we don't get enough time to do is play. And what we learned as an athlete, as a person who enjoyed playing all sorts of games, whether it was hopscotch or hide and seek, all of those taught us skills that we didn't know that we needed to learn in order to be effective as adults. And I think that problem solving, problem avoiding, all of those ideas that come together now as adults, they were cemented based on our ability to play. We see that now with our youngest learners. Peter, you saw that, having our students actually enjoy the fact that they are in shared space with one another. I see you as a human being. You see me as another human being. When we can actually master that content and that concept, the whole notion of diversity, it comes together. People understand we're all different, which is exactly what makes us all the same. And so that whole notion of diversity is it's a joy. So we see it through the learning of coming together and being able to now I see you as an equal. It is just, that's the beginning of learning, and then we take that to the next level. I could talk for hours and days, but it is the beginning, Peter. We're just getting started, and that's really what is exciting for me and for our team in Gwinnett. We've got a long ways to go. We've come a long way, and I just look forward to sharing and gaining additional knowledge from those who will join us during this cohort experience.
Calvin, you're going to be hitting it, but Andrew, actually, I think that you're just about to answer it. I'm just going to do it. I'm just kind of curious, like exactly what's going on in Central Cass. I mean, Andrew, you're superintendent of a K-8 district and up in Illinois, and you're doing a lot of like the career and college and life readiness in a K-8 district. I mean, how do you see these executive functioning life readiness skills showing in your world?
Well, they're essential. When Calvin and I were visiting in Gwinnett, amazing school district, great kiddos, by the way. I really enjoyed my time, Calvin.
Thank you, me too.
We call these the skills that stand the test of time. Whether it's 1940, 1980, 2040, 2080, kids are going to have to collaborate, communicate, think, exhibit self-control, take risks, right? We know that these are the skills that kids need. Research has shown us this. Time has shown us this, right? We all have these stories about where we picked up these skills and how they helped us move forward in our careers and how they've helped us help others. But yet we don't always do better, even though we know better. Sometimes we hop right in and focus on the what it is that we want kids to learn, what it is we want kids to do. We need to take a step back and focus on the who before we focus on the what, and ensure that our kids are in a good place to learn, that they have tools to help them learn, and that we are helping them become the best version of their learning selves. So yeah, every school district does it different. Here in Central Cass, we call ours learner characteristics, because we want our kids to be innovators and creators and collaborators and communicators and be self-directed learners. We spend a lot of time on student ownership here, student empowerment. And when you give students that autonomy, that authority to own their own learning and help them do it, they have to utilize these executive functioning and lifelong learning skills to make it happen. So every district does it different. And that's the beauty of this cohort. When we meet together on October 24th and 25th in Gwinnett County to talk about these amazing strategies that people are using and dig into the research, everyone that attends is going to leave with a plan moving forward, a plan to ensure that their students are getting the skills they need, truly the skills they need for today and for tomorrow.
So I'm going to lean on Peter for this one, but actually, Calvin, you said something absolutely beautiful that I love when you talk about playing games and like the games we engage in and the way that students can play and build those life skills through play. And Calvin might be frozen actually, so he might not be able to answer this. So Peter's going to show your portraits of a graduate. And Andrew, if you want to take a moment too, and Peter, if you want to talk about those portraits of the graduate, I'm thinking like, what kind of specific initiatives, programs, stuff that you've been doing to support these skills, especially as you've been building that portrait of a graduate. And Peter, do you want to take a moment and maybe talk about what you have on those?
Oh, sure. Well, I just think the portrait of graduate is a way for us to communicate about the 21st century skills that we want to see embedded all throughout every class, all parts of our curriculum. And I really like what Andrew said about, moving towards students as self-directed learners, that if we're thinking always command and control and not giving the kids any choice, you're not going to provide them the opportunity to develop those executive function skills. And when they actually leave our institution, eventually they need to have those skills to be able to be successful after they graduate. So yeah, I just kind of looked at the different elements. In West Valley, we identified integrity and empathy, adaptability and innovation, creative problem solving, and effective communication. In Andrews District, it was self-directed, empathetic, critical thinkers, effective communicators, collaborators, innovators. In Chris's district, it's having practical knowledge, being visionary, effective communicator, resilient and adaptable, culturally aware, informed and engaged neighbor, and a critical thinker. And in Calvin's district, it's adaptability, collaborative leadership, resourcefulness, empathy, critical thinking, and communication. And maybe, Andrew, you could talk about what are ways that you're working to operationalize this and to see this across the all parts of your system that you have there.
You know, absolutely. Well, I think first and foremost, they have to be more than words. We have to live it. In our district, many of us just went through a book study of ownership of their own learning by Ron Berger. Amazing book. We're also going through Marzano's new book when it comes to strategies to engage our learners in those lifelong learning and executive function skills, especially the first few weeks of school. We are really focused on the learner, making sure our kids from a social, emotional, mental health perspective are ready for learning and have the supports in place to help them learn. You know, we've also talked a lot about the learning pit here. And, you know, as educators, we're here to help, right? So we want to help kids, but we sometimes help kids, or we think we're helping kids by putting our hand out to help them, when really true help would be stepping back and letting them struggle through that learning process, that perseverance that happens as they struggle through the learning process, the resourcefulness that they have to come up with, you know, the problem solving in order to get themselves out of the learning pit or get over the hump when it comes to learning is really crucial too. So it's all of these strategies being put in place, and then doing the walkthroughs, doing the checks, having an evaluation tool or a growth and learning tool that actually touches upon these areas, as opposed to maybe the state model that's handed to you.
You hit a nail on a head. Like, you make a great point, Andrew. I kind of want to pull this out real quick, because honestly, when you're talking about this life readiness, right? Where you're describing this change of traditional practice, right? Because it used to be you come in, you take a test that's worth 100 points. You get it or you don't get it, but it doesn't matter. Class is moving on, right? So if there was an essential skill within that material, the class is going to move on whether you understood that essential material or not, even if in the next unit you needed that skill. And what you're saying is, and I just want to make sure I'm pulling this out, when you're talking about building these executive functioning and life readiness skills, we're just effectively having students in an old model. You go in, you take a test, you fail the test, we move on. Students aren't really prioritizing what they're learning. They're also not seeing a gateway to success, and they're not seeing a way to solve that problem. You're saying, I want my students to see what they need to know. I want them to work through it. I want them to struggle with it. I want them to persevere, but I want them to know that I'm going to be there to help them know what I need to know. I mean, if it's an essential skill, then they should be able to carry that forward. And that's a big change to your system.
Yeah.
How's it going?
Well, it's going great. Our learning community is amazed at what our students come up with, especially at the primary levels. Like, we have student leadership teams in kindergarten, first grade. They came to a board, our kindergartners came to a board meeting because they took on the problem of what to do during inside recess. So the kindergartners come together, they collaborate, they communicate, they problem solve, and they come up with this plan of what they need in order to make inside recess successful inside of their school building. And then they present to the school board. And of course, it's amazing. But I think sometimes we don't give our kids enough credit on their ability to exhibit success through these executive function and lifelong learning skills if we would just provide the framework and opportunity. But Chris, I want to go back to one thing that you did mention. When you were talking about the way it used to be about the product. And now it's about the process. Because if we teach kids those executive functioning and lifelong learning skills, if they have those, then it doesn't matter what you put in front of them, they'll be able to learn it. They'll be able to succeed. But they have to have those executive functioning and lifelong learning skills in order to do it.
Well, we have to let them, right? Because when we're in a model that just says we failed, we're moving on, we're not encouraging students to build those skills. We're encouraging to move on. And one thing, Calvin said something great, and I want to expand upon it. Calvin, you lost your connection, and then you're having a day, man. You are having,
but you're back.
But you're talking about like we played hopscotch, but I want to go to a different level. And I always make this comment. Can you imagine our athletic coaches coaching the way a traditional classroom works? Be like, hey, Calvin, you were not here for line. We're working on the line. You weren't here to figure out how to do a pass blocking. Pass blocking was over, bud. We're moving on without you. So I'm going to have you start on Friday, even though you didn't get the pass blocking skill, because I had to get on to rush blocking. I had to get on to, I had to get on to another part of the game of football. We would never have winning teams. And your coaches know that. So I think when you talk about like it's a process in a game and you're talking about the skills you get through the games, Calvin, I want to know, and I'm going to segue this, October 24th, 25th, what will superintendents in executive functioning see in Gwinnett County Public Schools when you're talking about building games and growing learners?
I love that analogy. As an athlete always, but also a scholar, the reality is it's going to be multifaceted, and what that means is, so we're going to talk about what learning looks like in Gwinnett County Public Schools. The reality is we are providing our students with opportunity and access. When I began my tenure as superintendent in 2021. Back in Gwinnett, the reality is we were resting on our laurels in many cases. Our school district has always done well academically. It certainly provided opportunities and access for students, but not for each and every. And as Gwinnett continued to grow and change and develop, the reality is we recognized that we were not addressing the needs of each and every child who attended Gwinnett County. And so when I arrived, I had to make some decisions and provide some recommendations to provide, first of all, the why. Why do we still do school the same way we do? And I asked this question: raise your hand if you enjoy getting better at getting better, if you love to improve. True story. And these were all of our leaders, our principals, our assistant principals, our district office staff. Everyone, to the person, raised their hand. I said, second question is, why is it, the second question, I want to know, please, would you raise your hand if you enjoy change? 2/3 of the hands went up.
Which is all about getting better at getting better.
Absolutely. And to that point, I said, the inconvenient truth, my friends, the leaders of our incredible organization of learning, the inconvenient truth is that we cannot improve unless and until we change.
I love that pull out. I love the pull out. One of my favorites I talk about how I coached women. I'm coaching a women's rugby team now and used to coach high school. As always, I need you to get comfortable with being uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's just like the exact same pull. You're going to be comfortable with being uncomfortable here.
Absolutely. And that was our reality. And that really kicked us off in the notion of we can't just keep resting on our laurels and expecting that students who are coming to us as multilingual learners, coming to us speaking a language, multiple languages, and yet we are expecting them to be proficient in English, but they had to learn how to learn. And that's where we began the conversation. And I'll just open it up, and I won't give too much, but we really focused on student voice. And in terms of what I would call as an innovative leader, my goal is to do something that's not been done before or that's not been done well before. And so one of the things that we hadn't done is we hadn't invested in our students' voice. We hadn't given them time to actually tell us who they were, tell us why they wanted to learn. And that executive function, lifelong learning, those skills came out through our portrait of a graduate. And that allowed us to routinize what it is that we wanted our students to know, to be thinkers, to be problem solvers, to be resourceful, to be leaders, to be thoughtful, and to engage in conversation, no matter who the person was. That led us to our superintendent student advisory council, where we have the opportunity. I look forward to sharing this showcase of middle school students and high school students who are not just learning, they're actually leading the way. And it's an exciting time for us.
So I promise both of you 30 minutes. So
I know, really. So
I was going to say, if we could do a quick go round, and I just want to know, like, what is the advice that you have for superintendents wanting executive functioning skills? In addition to come to Gwinnett County Schools, October 24th, 25th. In addition to, so I think that's just where we're going to hold that out there. What advice, and Peter, go ahead. I want to hear from you as well. Like, what is it we have what is the advice you have for aspiring superintendents working on these life and learning skills?
I would just say be a lifelong learner so that you can lead the work. So this whole podcast wouldn't be right without a shout out to Ellen Galinsky. Ellen's been a great thought partner.
Yes.
So that mindinthemaking.org, that website, and then the Breakthrough Years is her new book. So Mind in the Making, that talks about focus and self-control, perspective taking, communicating, making connections, critical thinking, taking on challenges, and self-directed engaged learning. So those are all important, especially perspective taking. It's so needed in our world today. We need to really be able to have that empathy and see things from other people's perspective. Anyways, I would just say continue to be a lifelong learner. That's my advice.
Andrew, what do you have for us? What's your one word, Andrew? Like, what is your quick superintendent?
My phrase would be, see everything that you do through the eyes of your students before you do it.
Mm.
We have to see learning through their eyes, and once we do, we open up a whole new world of educating our students.
Love that. Calvin, what is our big, like, again, you're going to host everybody, so you are the show. Your kids are the show. Your kids are the show.
They will always be the show, and that will always allow us to share that if you want to know the ground truth, ask a child. They will tell you every time. And that's what we've learned. Our youngest learners, middle school students, are teaching us as adults how to get along better, how to manage self, and actually teaching us to ask questions about how they're doing. So this is what I love. If you want to know the ground truth, ask a student every time. They'll tell you.
Well, with that, I thank you guys both for being here. So
Yeah.
thank you.